It was nearly 3 in the morning when it happened, the kind of hour where the world feels stretched thin, where silence isn't comforting but oppressive, pressing in from all sides like an unseen weight. I had been sitting at my desk for hours, my eyes burning from the harsh glow of my monitor, the sound of my keyboard clicking the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. A storm rumbled outside, faint and distant, a slow, lazy growl rolling through the blackened sky. I wasn't doing anything particularly interesting, just mindlessly clicking through YouTube, half watching horror videos while scrolling through Discord servers, the same way I had done 100 nights before. But then, in the middle of it all, a notification popped up in the bottom right corner of my screen, an invite to a server I didn't recognize. The waiting room. No profile picture, no mutual friends, just a simple, cold invitation with a single button, accept. For a second, I just stared at it, feeling the first cold prick of unease crawl up my spine. I hadn't joined any new servers in months, and I was sure I had my invite set to private. No one should have been able to send me one unless I allowed it. I hovered my mouse over the notification, debating whether I should ignore it, but the longer I looked at it, the more something about it felt off. It wasn't just that the invite had come out of nowhere, it was that it didn't look normal. There was something subtly wrong with the text, as if the font was slightly distorted, stretched in a way that my brain almost, but not quite, recognized as unnatural. My internet connection flickered for a brief moment, my Discord lagging for a split second before the invite reappeared. The same server name, the same empty profile, the same silent, unwavering demand, accept. And then, without warning, the message deleted itself. I sat there, my heart thudding in my chest, a strange sensation of static crawling up the back of my neck. Maybe it was a glitch, I told myself. Maybe some weird bot had sent it and then removed it before I could react. But before I could even finish the thought, my screen glitched again. The invite came back, this time accompanied by a message, written in stark, eerie simplicity. You finally woke up. Welcome home. I don't know why I clicked accept. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was the eerie, gut-wrenching feeling that something was watching me through the screen, waiting for me to react. Or maybe it was the fact that, as soon as the message appeared, my mouse moved on its own. My breath caught in my throat as I yanked my hand away from the desk, watching in horror as the cursor hovered over the button, hesitated for a fraction of a second, then clicked down with a sickening finality. My Discord screen flickered, the interface glitching for a moment as the waiting room loaded into my server list, the text an unnatural shade of gray, as if it wasn't meant to exist. The moment I entered, a chill spread through my entire body, my room feeling impossibly colder, as if something had crept in with me, something unseen and patient, lurking just out of reach. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling as I clicked into the member list, and that's when my stomach twisted into a tight, suffocating knot. There were over 300 members. But not a single one was online. Every username had a red, offline, status, every single profile timestamped with the same haunting detail, last active, years ago. Some were from 2018, others from 2014, some stretching back even further, their accounts abandoned like forgotten corpses. And yet, as I stared in growing horror, messages began to appear in the chat, rolling in one after another, filling the empty void with chilling, real-time activity. My hands were ice-cold as I scrolled up, my pulse hammering in my ears. How were they typing if they were all offline? The chat was a chaotic mess, a stream of frantic messages written in broken, fragmented sentences, like whispers through static, some cut off mid-thought, others repeating over and over as if someone had desperately tried to send them before they vanished into nothing. Is anyone there? Please, don't let it see you typing. You're not supposed to be here. Leave now before it. And then, as if something was watching, the chat abruptly cleared itself. Every message, every warning, every desperate plea, all wiped away in an instant, leaving behind a single, new message at the bottom of the screen. Unlike the rest, this one was crisp, clear, and addressed directly to me. Welcome, my username. We've been waiting for you. I stared at the screen, my breath shallow, my heartbeat a violent rhythm against my ribs. The message was waiting for me, my username standing out against the darkness of the chat like a whisper from something that shouldn't know I existed. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, the logical part of my brain screaming at me to close the app, shut down my computer, pretend I had never seen it. But there was another part, a deeper, more primal part, that knew this was no longer my decision to make. The moment I clicked that invitation, the moment I was accepted into this server, I had stepped into something far beyond my understanding. And now, they knew I was here. My monitor flickered, the brightness dimming for a split second before returning to normal, but in that instant, I swore I saw something, a reflection in the black void of the screen, standing right behind me. I whipped around so fast my chair nearly toppled over, my pulse a sharp, painful thunderclap in my ears. Nothing. My room was the same as it had always been, four walls, a desk, a bed, the dim glow of my LED lights casting long, twisted shadows across the floor. But something felt different. The air was heavier, thick like fog, pressing against my skin, seeping into my lungs. It was as if the room itself was watching me. Then, my screen glitched again. The message changed. Don't turn around. My stomach dropped. My hands went numb, my fingers trembling against the keyboard as the text typed itself out in real time. A hollow, icy terror spread through my chest, my body frozen in place, a primal instinct screaming at me to obey, to keep my eyes locked on the screen, to not acknowledge whatever was standing behind me. But then, something else happened. A new message. If you can read this, it's already too late. And then, with a sudden, ear-piercing screech, my screen went black. The silence was absolute, suffocating, pressing down on me like an invisible weight. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, slick with sweat, trembling slightly as I fought the instinct to turn around. I knew what I had seen on the screen, a figure standing behind my chair. It wasn't just a trick of the light. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. But when I finally forced myself to look, my breath hitched in my throat. The room was empty. The air, however, felt charged, like the atmosphere before a storm, humming with something unseen, something wrong. My chair hadn't moved. My closet door remained slightly ajar, a sliver of blackness stretching into the unknown. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Something was here, just beyond my sight, just beyond the veil of the ordinary. Then, from inside the closet, a single, deliberate knock. My skin turned to ice, my heart hammering against my ribs so violently I thought it might crack them open. Knock. 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 Each impact was slow, methodical, as if whatever was inside was waiting for a response. I couldn't breathe. The room, once familiar and safe, had become alien, hostile, filled with something that didn't belong. My first thought was to run, to bolt from the room, down the stairs, out the door, into the cold safety of the night. But I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't respond. And then, against every survival instinct screaming in my head, I reached out. My hand trembled violently as I gripped the edge of the closet door, my fingertips burning from the cold seeping from the darkness within. With a deep, shuddering breath, I yanked the door open, and the light bulb in my room exploded. Glass rained down around me as the room was swallowed by absolute darkness, an abyss so deep it felt like falling into nothingness. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was the breathing. Ragged. Shallow. Right in front of me. Close enough that I could feel the heat against my face, close enough that I knew I wasn't alone. The closet was empty when I opened it, and yet, now, in the consuming darkness, something was there. I could feel it. Smell it. A scent like damp earth and something rotting. The air was thick, choking, and then, it moved. A whisper of fabric. A shift in the shadows. And then, before I could scream, before I could even think, a voice slithered through the darkness, low and distorted, as if spoken from inside my own skull. I could hear it, that voice. It whispered again, echoing inside my skull like it was coming from a dark, forgotten corner of my mind. "I've been waiting for you." The words scraped against my sanity, scraping the edges of my thoughts as if trying to tear them apart. For a second, I froze. My body locked in place as my heart thudded painfully against my chest. It felt as though the room was pressing in on me, suffocating me, until I could barely breathe. The only thing I could hear now was the blood rushing through my ears and that breathing, soft, shallow, almost as if it wasn't even breathing at all, but the sound of something, waiting. Then, suddenly, the temperature dropped. A rush of cold air slammed into me, biting my skin, making my teeth chatter. I felt my skin crawl, every hair standing on end, as the room seemed to distort around me, warping in unnatural ways, like the walls were shifting in response to whatever was in that closet. I didn't know what it was, but I could feel it now, an undeniable presence, something so wrong that even my mind refused to accept it. The voice continued, now accompanied by a sound that was even worse than the breathing, a low, rattling sound, like something dragging itself across the floor. Something heavy, something monstrous. The silence between each scrape was agonizing, stretching out like an eternity. I should have run. I should have screamed. But I couldn't move. As I stood frozen in that room, my mind began to unravel. Was this real? Was I losing my mind? I couldn't trust my own senses anymore. The shadows in the room grew deeper, more oppressive, like they were alive, reaching out for me. I thought I saw something in the corner of my eye, a flicker, a shift in the dark. But when I turned, there was nothing. The closet door creaked, and I felt a tremor run through my spine. It was like I was trapped in a nightmare, and no matter how hard I tried to wake up, I couldn't. I couldn't escape. The air became thick, thick with dread, with something ancient, something that had been waiting. I could feel its cold fingers curling around my throat, squeezing, suffocating. And then it happened. The door to the closet slammed shut, so violently that the walls shook. I gasped, stumbling backward, my heart skipping a beat. It was as though something had been set free, something that had been locked inside for far too long. The air crackled with energy, an electric charge that buzzed against my skin, crawling underneath, digging into my bones. I felt an overwhelming pressure in my chest, a weight that threatened to crush me. The shadows were closing in, the room shrinking, the walls pulsing as if alive. I had to get out. I had to run, but my legs refused to cooperate. The world around me began to fade, and the darkness seemed to swallow everything, except for those eyes. I saw them, glowing from the corner of the room. At first, they were just points of light, flickering like distant stars. But then they grew, expanding, becoming shapes, until there were dozens of them, red eyes, glaring at me from the darkness. I could feel their gaze, cold and suffocating, as if they were drawing me in, forcing me to look. I tried to look away, but the eyes held me in place, pulling at me like a magnet, and with every second, I could feel myself sinking deeper into the madness. I was losing myself, losing everything I was. I didn't know what they were, but I could hear their voices in my head now, their laughter, hollow and cruel. They whispered the same thing over and over, like a chant. You shouldn't have come. And in that moment, the truth hit me, it had never been about me. It wasn't about a random encounter with an unknown force. No, this place, this house, this nightmare, it had been waiting. Waiting for me. The feeling of the thing's claws sinking deeper into my skin, the raw, unrelenting pressure, was like nothing I had ever experienced. I couldn't breathe. It felt as if the very air was being sucked out of my lungs. The pain was agonizing, but there was something worse, a suffocating, bone-chilling cold that radiated from the creature's touch, so cold that it seemed to freeze the blood in my veins. As it tightened its grip, I could feel my body stiffening, like a puppet whose strings were being slowly pulled apart. My heart raced, beating so loud I could hear it in my ears, but I couldn't scream, couldn't even whisper. My mind was reeling, trapped in the agony of what was happening to me. I realized with growing horror that this was it, this was how I would die. This creature, this thing, had waited for years for me to make the mistake of reopening that door, and now, it had me. My body felt heavy, like it was being dragged underwater, my limbs numb and useless. All I could think was that I had to get away, had to escape, but I couldn't. Suddenly, I felt it, a voice, but not from the creature. This one was inside my head, sharp and clear, like a whisper from the deepest corner of my mind. "You should have never come back," it said, and the words were more terrifying than anything I had heard before. They were cold, cruel, as if mocking me for my failure. The air grew heavier, and the shadows around me thickened, swirling in on themselves like they were alive, pulling me further into the dark. The door that I had opened so carelessly, it had never been meant to be opened. It had been a prison, a barrier between me and whatever this thing was, and now that barrier had shattered. I had brought it all back. I could feel the darkness closing in, not just around me, but within me. It was as if the shadows were creeping into my mind, slowly suffocating my thoughts, distorting them into something foreign, something evil. My body shook uncontrollably as the dark presence seemed to invade every inch of my being, taking away pieces of me. I could hear my heartbeat, but it wasn't my own anymore. The rhythm had changed. It was slower, more methodical, its heartbeat. I was no longer in control of my own body. It was as though the thing was sinking with me, taking over, inch by inch. I wanted to fight back, to scream, to run, but something was stopping me. The sensation was suffocating, like I was drowning in my own terror. The walls were closing in on me, pressing in tighter and tighter, and I knew in my gut that if I didn't do something soon, I would be lost forever. The darkness around me seemed to pulse with malicious energy, the very air thick with dread. And then, the thing, the creature, whispered again, its voice so soft it sent a shiver down my spine. "Look at me." I didn't want to. I couldn't. But the compulsion was too strong. Slowly, unwillingly, my head turned, and I came face to face with the thing. Its eyes, those countless, glowing, soulless eyes, were staring at me, and it felt like they were inside me, watching every fleeting thought, every flicker of fear that crossed my mind. It wasn't just looking at me, it was feeding on my fear, savoring every moment of my torment. "You don't belong here," it hissed, the voice now filling the entire room, echoing in my skull, drowning out everything else. In that instant, the world around me seemed to explode into darkness, the room vanishing completely, as if I had been swallowed by the very shadows. There was no escape. I was trapped, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. The creature's grip tightened, its claws digging deeper, and I could feel its presence growing stronger, invading every part of me. I realized with an ice-cold jolt that this wasn't just a nightmare, it was real. And if I couldn't break free, I would become part of the darkness forever. I can't remember how long I've been trapped in this suffocating nightmare. Time has become meaningless, frozen in a terrifying standstill where every moment feels like an eternity, stretching and twisting, bending to the will of the darkness around me. But something has changed. It's subtle at first, like a faint whisper echoing through the thick fog of terror that surrounds me. It feels like it's watching me more intently now, waiting for me to make the next move, to give it an opening. It knows me. It knows every corner of my soul. The creature, it's waiting for something. What, though? I don't know. The grip it has on me has loosened just enough for me to catch a breath. I can't tell if it's teasing me, enjoying the way I panic, or if it's preparing for something worse. And that thought, the very idea of something worse, it terrifies me to my core. I can feel its power growing stronger. Every time I try to move, try to fight, it tightens its hold, as if reminding me that it is in control. And I am nothing but a pawn in its game. I can feel the presence of the darkness creeping deeper into me, spreading through my veins like liquid ice. It's like my blood is turning cold, and with each passing second, the more I lose myself to the abyss. It's almost as if my identity is slipping away, melting into the shadows. The fear, it isn't just fear anymore. It's becoming something else. It's an overwhelming sense of loss, the feeling that I'm being erased, that the person I was before this night is slipping through my fingers like sand. And all the while, the creature's eyes remain fixed on me, those endless, glowing eyes. They see me, and the worst part is, I can feel it understanding me. It knows the depths of my fears, the darkest corners of my mind that even I refuse to face. There's no escape from that kind of scrutiny, that kind of torment. The walls of the room have closed in so tightly now that I can barely breathe, my chest constricted as if the air itself is being sucked from my lungs. The shadows seem to pulse and writhe, taking on shapes that move and shift in the corners of my vision, teasing me with the promise of something just out of reach, but whenever I try to look, they vanish, like whispers in the dark. It's toying with me, and it's winning. And then, suddenly, I hear it, a low, guttural sound, like something dragging itself across the floor. It's distant at first, but growing closer, its rhythm uneven and full of unnatural discord. I want to scream, to shout, to beg for help, but I can't. My voice is lost, swallowed by the oppressive silence that weighs down on me. The sound intensifies, a scraping, gnawing sound, almost like claws on stone. I know it's coming for me. I can feel it, sense it in the air, as if the very ground beneath me is trembling with anticipation. The darkness seems to retreat slightly, drawing back just enough to allow me a glimpse of something horrible. The thing is coming, and it's worse than I could have ever imagined. It's no longer just a creature of shadows. It's something more, something that feeds not just on fear, but on hope, on despair, on every dark emotion I've ever felt. As it draws closer, the air grows heavier, thicker, almost impossible to breathe. The temperature drops even further, and I feel the sting of ice forming on my skin. It is alive, this thing, this evil, and it is not here for mercy. It is here for me. It's drawing closer, and I can't move. The terror in my chest is suffocating me now, filling every crevice of my mind. I can't escape. I can't run. I'm running out of time. I never believed in things like this, not the stories, not the whispers, not the rumors. But now, with every breath I take, the realization sinks deeper into my bones. I am not just a victim here, not just some helpless soul lost in the void. I am being hunted. The creature, the thing that has followed me from the moment I crossed its path, has finally revealed itself in full, and the terror of it is so overwhelming, so absolute, that I wonder if anyone could ever truly understand the depths of my horror. The air itself has turned to liquid, thick with dread, so heavy that it feels like I'm drowning with every gasp. Its presence presses against me, a weight that I cannot shake, a shadow that is now an inescapable part of my very existence. The scraping noise, the terrible, relentless sound, has stopped, but only to be replaced by something far worse, silence. Deep, profound, suffocating silence. The silence of death. It's the kind of quiet that seeps into your bones, that makes every heartbeat feel like a drumbeat signaling your impending doom. I can feel it. I can feel it in the air, in the ground beneath my feet, in the very walls surrounding me. It is coming, just beyond the threshold of my vision, its shape taking form in the dark spaces where the shadows twist and writhe. And then, a sound, a breath. A slow, deep inhale, like a dying man's final sigh. It's here. The thing I've been avoiding, the thing that has been stalking me, watching me with its eyes that never blink, is standing right in front of me. I can't see it clearly, not yet. But I can feel it. Its presence is like a cold, suffocating fog that has crept into every corner of my mind, filling the air with a stench so foul I nearly vomit. And in that moment, as I stand paralyzed with fear, the thing whispers. The sound is nothing like any human voice I've ever heard. It is distorted, guttural, 1,000 voices speaking in unison, each one laced with malice. It calls to me, a soft murmur that sends chills down my spine, like a lover's whisper, but one laced with the promise of unimaginable pain. You cannot escape me. I try to move, but my limbs are frozen, as if shackled to the very ground. My skin feels like it's being burned by the invisible presence that encircles me. The room feels alive, as if it's shifting, changing in response to the creature's will. The walls breathe in and out, pulsing with a sickening rhythm, as if the very structure of the world around me is responding to its power. My mind races, but it's trapped in a haze of fear, unable to find a single clear thought. I try to scream, to call out, but my voice is swallowed by the oppressive darkness, as if the room itself has closed its ears to me. The thing steps forward, and I can feel its cold, unholy breath against my neck, the whisper growing louder, more frantic. I am not alone. It's here. And it is waiting. Waiting for me to break, waiting for me to do something, anything, that might give it the power it seeks. It wants me to suffer. It wants me to beg. My entire body is shaking now, my heart racing so fast I fear it might explode from my chest. I have no idea how much longer I can hold on. How much longer I can resist the urge to give in to the suffocating terror that threatens to swallow me whole. But I know one thing, it is not just after me. It's after everything I hold dear, every memory, every piece of myself that it can steal away. It wants to erase me. Completely. And in the end, when it has taken everything, it will leave me a hollow shell of the person I once was, a walking, breathing corpse with nothing but the remnants of my soul left behind. And then, as the silence presses in once more, I hear it, a scream. But not mine. No, it's not mine. The scream is coming from somewhere else, somewhere deeper, somewhere beyond the reach of my understanding. It is the scream of someone, something, who has already succumbed, who has already fallen to the darkness. And that scream, it sounds like me. I don't understand how it's possible, but I can hear it, feel it in my very bones, like the echo of my own future. It's coming, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. Every breath is a struggle now. I can hear the thudding of my heart, like a drumbeat, pounding in my chest, as if it knows, deep down, that the end is inevitable. I don't know how much time has passed since I first felt its presence in the shadows, but every second feels like a lifetime, and yet, it feels like no time at all. The walls of the house are alive, pulsing with a malevolent energy that seems to respond to the creature's every movement. I can see nothing clearly anymore, the world has become a haze of twisting shadows, flickering lights, and unbearable tension. It's as though I'm living inside a nightmare I can't escape, and the worst part is that I'm not sure I want to anymore. A part of me, the part that knows I'm losing my sanity, is beginning to surrender to it, to him. In the thick darkness, the creature has been taunting me, whispering in my ear, its voice both terribly sweet and sickeningly soothing. The longer it speaks, the more I feel my mind unraveling. You think you can escape, it croons, its voice as smooth as silk, but with an edge that makes my skin crawl. The thing is everywhere now, in everything, inside everything. It's in the air I breathe, in the floor beneath my feet, in the whispers that echo in my skull. I try to run, I try to escape, but it's like trying to flee from your own shadow. I can feel it getting closer with every step I take. My legs are trembling, not from fatigue, but from something far worse, the knowledge that I'm being driven into the arms of something that has been waiting for me forever. I can't keep up the charade much longer. I know the truth now. There is no escape. Suddenly, I stop dead in my tracks. I can hear something. A soft, muffled sound. A voice. My voice. But it's not coming from me. It's coming from the walls, from the floor, from the very air around me. The thing is imitating me, mocking me. It knows my deepest fears, my darkest thoughts, my every weakness. It has become me, or at least it wants to. It's trying to break me down, to make me feel like I'm losing myself, like I'm not who I think I am anymore. I can hear the voice calling my name, sweetly, urgently. It's my voice, but it isn't. I turn sharply, my eyes scanning the shadows, but there is nothing there. Just darkness. Nothing but silence and the pulse of my racing heartbeat. I should run. But something stops me. I can't look away. And that's when I see it. It steps out of the shadows, tall and impossibly thin, with a face that seems to shift with every glance. It's me, and yet it isn't. Its eyes are cold, lifeless, void of any humanity. I stare at it, horrified, unable to move, my body frozen in place by an overwhelming sense of dread. The creature smiles, my smile, but there is nothing human about it. The smile twists, stretches, growing impossibly wide, revealing rows of teeth too sharp to be real, too monstrous to belong to anything that ever lived. And then, in a voice that echoes in my head, it whispers the words I dread most, "I've been waiting for you." A surge of terror erupts within me, and I try to scream, but the words die in my throat, swallowed by the overwhelming presence of this thing that isn't quite a monster and isn't quite me. It steps closer, its form flickering like a flame, shifting and changing as though it is both part of the darkness and yet not, a thing that exists only to torment, to break me, to make me a part of it. I try to move, but my feet feel like they are glued to the floor, my body paralyzed, my muscles screaming in protest as I struggle to break free. The thing is so close now, I can feel its breath, cold and foul against my skin, like a death rattle. Its eyes lock onto mine, and for the first time, I realize that it's not just watching me. It's inside me. It's feeding on me, draining my will, my sense of self, until there's nothing left but fear. There is no escape from it, not now, not ever. The creature has already won. I'm not sure how long I've been standing here, trapped in this nightmarish tableau, but I can feel myself starting to fade. My body is weakening, my thoughts becoming a blur. And then, with a sickening certainty, I understand, the creature isn't just after my body. It's after my soul. It has come to claim me, to erase me from existence, to make me just another part of its eternal darkness. And in that moment, I realized that everything I've been running from, everything I've feared, has been leading to this, the final moment of surrender. The end of me. And there is nothing I can do to stop it. I felt the walls closing in on me, suffocating me with a pressure I couldn't understand, as though the air itself had turned against me. My legs trembled, my thoughts fragmented, and my body moved on its own, as though the very act of survival had stripped away my ability to think. The thing, the creature that had been stalking me, toying with me, unraveling me piece by piece, was closer than ever before. I could feel its presence more acutely now. Its breath, raspy, uneven, sounded from all directions, reverberating in the corners of my mind. I knew it was watching me, waiting for the moment when I would finally break. And I was close. So close to breaking. But in that moment of despair, something shifted inside me, something deep, primal, that I couldn't explain or control. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything that would make the thing go away, but I had learned something: it doesn't let you run. It feeds on your fear, on your desperation, and the more you try to flee, the more it tightens its grip on you. Its eyes, those cold, empty eyes, watched me from the darkness, gleaming with satisfaction, like it knew the inevitable end was near. Yet, a strange sense of clarity began to fill my mind, cutting through the terror. I wasn't just running from it anymore. I was running towards something. Towards the truth. Towards the only thing that could save me. The truth, I realized, was something I had been avoiding all along. The creature, this thing, wasn't just some supernatural force beyond comprehension. It wasn't some demon or ghost from the depths of some twisted nightmare. No, it was a reflection. My reflection. And the more I tried to escape from it, the more I fought against the knowledge that was growing inside me, the more it fed on me. The horror I felt, the terror that seemed to paralyze me, was not just fear, it was guilt. The creature was me, a shadow of myself, born from the dark corners of my soul, from the parts of myself I had buried and tried to forget. The doubts, the regrets, the choices I had made and tried to justify. Every lie, every weakness. I had created it. I had become it. And now it was here to finish what it had started. But in that moment, I knew something else. I knew that it wasn't too late. The darkness that surrounded me, the thing that had been tearing me apart, couldn't survive in the light. I had to face it. I had to confront it, even if it meant losing myself in the process. I forced myself to stand, to gather what little strength I had left, and I turned toward the creature, no longer running, no longer hiding. It was standing there, its figure flickering in and out of existence like a nightmare that couldn't decide if it wanted to be real or not. Its mouth twisted into that familiar smile, mocking me. But I didn't flinch. You can't escape. The words were like ice, and they pierced the air, cold and final. But I wasn't listening anymore. I couldn't afford to listen. There was no way to fight it physically, it wasn't something that could be destroyed. But I realized, with growing clarity, that there was something far more dangerous than fear, something even the creature couldn't withstand. Self-awareness. I had to face the truth about myself, about the dark places I had hidden away, about the monster I had allowed to fester inside me. That was the only weapon I had left. I began to speak, to address the thing that mirrored me, my voice shaking but determined. You are me, aren't you? You are everything I've feared about myself. Every mistake, every regret, every fear, you are my shadow. The creature didn't move, didn't speak, but I could feel the pressure in the air intensifying, like it was trying to force me back into silence. But I wouldn't let it. I see you now. And I know you can't hurt me unless I let you. For a moment, the thing seemed to pause. Its eyes, those cold, dead eyes, narrowed, like it wasn't used to being challenged. Then, in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once, it spoke. You think you can defeat me? You think you can rid yourself of me? The voice was both mocking and full of something darker, a twisted amusement. But there was a tremor in it, a crack in the facade, like it was beginning to realize something had shifted. I could feel its grip on me loosen, if only slightly. My pulse quickened as I realized the truth. This wasn't just a battle between me and the creature. It was a battle for my very soul, for my very will to live. The darkness had been waiting for this moment, for me to face the very things I had been too afraid to acknowledge. But the thing was wrong. I had faced it, and I was stronger than it. I had come back from the abyss before, and I would do it again. It wasn't just about fighting the creature anymore. It was about taking back my life, my identity, and everything I had almost lost. The creature began to flicker again, its form destabilizing, like a shadow that couldn't hold itself together. And in that moment, I knew it was weakening. I wasn't just confronting it, I was destroying it. Not with violence, not with force, but with acceptance. The darkness could no longer hold me captive. I had faced the shadow, and in doing so, I had exposed it for what it truly was, a part of me that I could finally let go of. And as the creature flickered, as its twisted form began to dissolve into the darkness from which it had come, I knew that I had won. Not because I defeated it, but because I finally understood it. And in doing so, I had freed myself. The walls around me seemed to breathe a sigh of relief as the oppressive weight lifted, the house no longer a prison but a place that would now allow me to heal. The creature was gone, but the truth, my truth, remained. And that truth was more terrifying than anything I had ever faced.